November 30, 1939. Soviet artillery opens fire across the entire Finnish border. Stalin's plan is textbook Red Army doctrine. Marshal Kirill Meretskav's 7th Army will smash through the Karelian Isthmus toward Viipuri, while 3 more armies punch across the waste of Finland to cut the country in half. On the northern shore of Lake Ladoga, the Soviet 8th Army under Ivan Khabarov commits 6 full rifle divisions, over 130,000 men, to break through Ladoga Karelia, wheel south, and roll up the Finnish Mannerheim line from behind. Standing in their way in the Kollaa sector, Colonel Antero Svensson and the exhausted understrength task force Svensson. His main combat element is Infantry Regiment 34, JR 34, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Vilho Taitinen. Total combat strength in the Kollaa sector at the opening of the battle, roughly 4,600 Finns spread across a front over 10 kilometers wide, holding a line of low forested ridges above the frozen Kalanjoki River. The terrain is the first thing that matters. Kollaa sits inside a labyrinth of dense boreal forest, snow-choked ravines, and swamps frozen just hard enough to swallow a tank. There are only 2 decent roads. The Soviet 56th Rifle Corps, 3 divisions, 155th, 139th, and eventually 168th, is roped to those roads like a leashed animal. Their T-26 tanks cannot leave the tracks. Their supply columns cannot leave the tracks. Their field kitchens, ammunition sleds, and radios cannot leave the tracks. Every Soviet soldier who steps off the road into the snow sinks to his thighs in minus 30 degrees Celsius cold, wearing summer boots issued from the Ukrainian summer maneuvers of that year. The Finns wear white. They ski. They know every deer path, and they've built something the Red Army has no name for yet: the Mahti tactic. Cut the road, split the column, surround the pieces, let the cold do half the killing. But that was only the setup. What Colonel Taitinen would order on the morning of December 17 defied every rule in the Soviet field manual, and it started with just 32 men. By mid-December, the Soviet 139th Rifle Division has already been mauled at Talviavi, 40 kilometers north. Moscow rushes the 75th Rifle Division to plug the line. Their orders from 8th Army headquarters are simple: break through at Kollaa, take Leimola Station, cut the Finnish rail supply line, and open the road to Sordavala. Everything hinges on Kollaa. On December 17, 1939, a reinforced Soviet battalion of the 75th Rifle Division, supported by artillery and elements totaling roughly 4,000 troops across the sector, launches its main assault against a low, wooded ridge held by a single Finnish company from JR 34. The company commander is Captain Arne Juutalainen. His nickname, earned during his years with the French Foreign Legion in Morocco, is Moroccan Kahu, the terror of Morocco. He fought Berbers in the Atlas Mountains. He speaks 4 languages. He drinks like a Cossack and swears like a stevedore. And on that morning, half his company is already dead, wounded, or evacuated with frostbite. Juutalainen counts what's left: 32 riflemen, 1 Ladi-Saloranta M26 light machine gun, rifles Mosin Nagant M2830s, the Finnish modified version, frozen bread, almost no reserve ammunition. Behind him, nothing. If the ridge falls, the road to Leimola opens. If Leimola falls, the entire Ladoga Karelia front collapses. The Soviets come out of the tree line in waves. Standard doctrine: human wave assault behind a rolling artillery barrage. The Finns hold fire. They wait. When the first Soviet line reaches 30 meters, Juutalainen gives the order. The Ladi-Saloranta opens up. 31 rifles fire in near-perfect discipline, aimed shots, 1 target per round. Simo Heihe, the young corporal from WWII serving in the neighboring JR 34 sector, is doing the same thing that morning with iron sights and a white sniper's smock, adding to what will become 505 confirmed kills in 100 days, the highest confirmed sniper score in the history of warfare. The first Soviet wave breaks. A second wave forms, then a third. Between assaults, Juutalainen walks his line, cursing, joking, redistributing cartridges from the dead to the living. The temperature drops through minus 35. Wounded Soviet soldiers freeze to the ground within minutes. Finnish medics can't move. Any movement draws artillery. And here is what the history books leave out. Around midday, a runner reaches Juutalainen from regimental headquarters. Lieutenant Colonel Taitinen has sent 1 question up the line: "Can you hold?" Juutalainen's reply becomes one of the most quoted sentences in Finnish military history. 2 words in Finnish: Kollaa kestie. Kollaa holds. If this is landing, save this video. You'll want to come back to this one. Because what that sentence unlocked next is exactly why elite Western militaries still teach Kollaa in their staff colleges. Kollaa kestie was not bravado. It was a tactical decision, one that traveled up the chain of command within hours. Colonel Svensson interpreted it as a green light. Instead of pulling JR-34 back to a shorter line, which was the conservative textbook move, he ordered every reserve platoon, every cook, every wireless operator, every walking wounded to hold in place. The Finns would not retreat. They would bleed the Red Army into every meter of forest. Over the next 72 hours, the Soviet 75th Division launches an estimated 7 separate battalion-strength attacks against Judalanen's Ridge and the neighboring positions. Everyone is broken. By December 20, Soviet dead in front of the Kollaa Ridge line number in the low thousands, many killed by rifle fire, many killed by cold, many by artillery from their own guns firing blind through the trees. Finnish losses in Judalanen's company alone continue to mount. By the end of December, JR-34 has been reinforced twice and is still under half strength. But something else is happening. Colonel Svensson has been studying the Soviet columns to his north. The 139th and 75th Divisions are strung out along the single road, their supply tail exposed. He orders ski companies from JR-34 and JR-36 to swing wide through the forests, 20-30 kilometers around the Soviet flanks, and cut the road behind them. The Finns invent, refine, and industrialize the Matti, the log pile. A Finnish ski patrol slashes through the road at a chosen point, blocks it with felled timber and mines, then splits off a section of the Soviet column, a rifle battalion, a supply train, a headquarters element, and surrounds it. The trapped Soviets can't leave the road. Their tanks freeze solid at night, the T-26 engines seize below -20. Their horses die. Their wounded die. Their food runs out in 72 hours. Then the Finns pick them apart in daylight raids by ski platoons of 30 to 40 men. By early January 1940, the Kollaa sector alone contains over a dozen active Mattis. The Soviet 18th Rifle Division, further north around Lemedi, is annihilated in the same way, roughly 15,000 Soviets killed or frozen to death in the Great Matti of Lemedi before the survivors surrender in early March. Along the entire Ladoga-Karelia front, Soviet losses climb into the tens of thousands. At Kollaa itself, Simo Heija keeps working, 98 days in the snow. Iron sights only no scope because a scope glints and gives away position. On March 6, 1940, an explosive Soviet bullet strikes his lower jaw. He is carried out unconscious with half his face gone. He survives, barely. The Kollaa line still holds, but here is the twist even Marshal Mannerheim did not expect. The battle that saved Finland was not being won at Kollaa. It was being won in Moscow, and it was Kollaa that was forcing the decision. By late January 1940, Stalin has seen enough. Marshal Kliment Voroshilov, his old Civil War crony and defense commissar, is quietly pushed aside. Marshal Semyon Timoshenko takes command of the entire Finnish front. He reorganizes into the Northwestern Front. He brings in fresh divisions, over 600,000 troops massed against the Karelian Isthmus alone by February. He brings in the new KV-1 heavy tanks. He brings in massed artillery, over 3,000 guns on the Isthmus front. And critically, he stops sending small columns down forest roads to be eaten by Matti tactics. He concentrates. He hammers. He turns the war into a First World War-style attritional grind against the Mannerheim line. The reason Timoshenko changes doctrine, the reason 350,000 additional Soviet troops are diverted from the northern approaches, is Kollaa and its sister battles. Suomussalmi, Talviaievi, Rot Road. In every one, small Finnish forces destroy or immobilize Soviet divisions many times their size using the same terrain and cold formula that Judalanen's 32 men proved on December 17. The Mannerheim line eventually breaks on February 11, 1940 at Summa on the Isthmus, under artillery weight no Finnish army could match. The Moscow Peace Treaty is signed on March 13, 1940. Finland loses 11% of its territory, including Viipuri and most of Karelia. But Finland is not occupied. Finland is not annexed. Finland keeps its army, its government, its independence. The only country to share a border with the USSR in 1939 and still exist as a sovereign state in 1945. Soviet casualties in the Winter War, per the most credible modern Russian archival research by Krivoshev, 126,875 killed and missing, over 264,000 wounded, an estimated 5,600 tanks destroyed or damaged. Finnish losses, approximately 25,904 killed, 43,557 wounded, a ratio of nearly 5-to-1 against the aggressor. At Kollaa specifically, the ridge Judalainen defended never fell. The battle only ended when the peace treaty ended the war. On the morning of March 13, 1940, Finnish troops walked off the Kollaa position under orders, not defeat. The lesson Timoshenko took from Kollaa was written into Red Army doctrine within 18 months. When the Wehrmacht invaded in June 1941, the The Soviets fought differently, deep operations, combined arms, defense in depth. Modern NATO defensive doctrine, U.S. Army Field Manual chapters on economy of force, Israeli Golan Heights defensive planning, all trace intellectual lineage to what a Finnish captain and 31 riflemen proved on a frozen ridge in December 1939. Numbers do not decide battles. Terrain, doctrine, and the will to stand do. Drop in the comments. Do you think the Finns could have held longer than 105 days if Britain and France had actually sent the promised expeditionary force? I want to hear your read. CTA 1213 Min. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for, people who want the real decisions, the real commanders, the real turning points behind history's most impossible battles. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. New battle every Wednesday. Next week we go deep into an operation the Soviets tried to bury for 50 years, and you don't want the algorithm to hide it from you. Outro 1315 Min. There is a small stone monument at Kollaa today in the forest that is now part of the Russian Federation. Finnish veterans and their grandchildren still walk there in the summer. The inscription is 2 words, Kollaa Kestie, Kollaa holds. Argentines survived the Winter War, went on to fight in the Continuation War, and died in Helsinki in 1976, the terror of Morocco to the end. Simo Häyhä lived until 2002, quiet, farming moose and dogs in eastern Finland, having politely declined every offer to write his memoirs. He was asked once how he became the deadliest sniper in history. His answer, practice. The lesson from Kollaa is not about heroism. It is about arithmetic. A defender who knows his ground, chooses his moment, and refuses to yield can impose a cost on an attacker that no strategic calculation can justify. Stalin learned it in 10 weeks. The Wehrmacht relearned it outside Moscow 18 months later. And every modern army that studies mountain, forest, or urban defense still teaches the ridge above the Kalanjoki. 32 men, 1 machine gun, 2 words that stopped an empire. If this one hit, my video on the Battle of Suomussalmi, where 11,000 Finns destroyed 2 entire Soviet divisions on a single road, will blow your mind. It's the sequel Kollaa deserves. December 17, 1939. On a frozen ridge above the Kalanjoki River, Captain Argentines, the terror of Morocco, and 32 Finnish riflemen with 1 light machine gun stood against a reinforced Soviet battalion pushing 4,000 troops through the Kollaa sector. The Battle of Kollaa lasted 105 days, from December 7, 1939 to March 13, 1940, and the Finnish line never broke. This is the full story of the ridge that stopped an army, the sniper Simo Häyhä and his 505 confirmed kills, and the 2 words that became Finnish military legend, Kollaa Kestie, Kollaa holds. Discover how Colonel Antero Svensson, LT, Carl Vilho Taitnen, and the men of Infantry Regiment 34 forced Marshal Timoshenko to rewrite Soviet doctrine, why the Mahdi tactic destroyed entire Red Army divisions in the Ladoga Karelia forests, and how the Winter War ended with Finland bloodied but sovereign, the only country bordering the USSR in 1939, still independent in 1945. 0000 Hook, 32 versus 4000 35 Intro, Stakes of the Winter War 0130 Section 1, The Chessboard of Ice 0400 Section 2, 32 Men on a Ridge 0700 Section 3, The Cost of 2 Words 0930 Section 4, The Ridge That Rewrote a War 12, 15 Subscribe 13, 00 Outro, Kollaa Kestie.